First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions to the agenda by chance?
Mr. Chairman, we do have a recommended addition to the agenda following a written request from Capstone Infrastructure. The recommendation is to add under 6.2 other business, request for special meeting of the Municipal Planning Commission.
Okay. Any other additions, omissions, changes? Okay, all those in favor of the agenda as presented? Oh, sorry. Dan moves approval of the agenda as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, minutes from the May 14th, 2024 meeting of the Municipal Planning Commission. Nigel moves approval of the minutes from the May 14th meeting. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, first consideration today is development permit 24132, temporary gravel crushing. I would assume you gentlemen are there to represent that. Would you please take the chairs up front? So there's you're familiar with the button and all of that. You've been in before, right? So when asked to speak, there's a button you push there and it'll turn blue, I think. Okay, I guess, yeah, 24132, Aaron?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application is located at East Half 2793 west of the 4th. The owner is Ross Creek Quarry and the applicant is MJB Enterprises Limited. MJB Enterprises Limited is proposing to restart and expand. They have received approval to expand and restart a gravel pit, and that was approved as DP 23/122 last year on June 13th, 2023. And when that gravel pit was approved by MPC, a condition was added requiring MPC approval of any crushing operations on the site. And that is why the application is before you today. The hours of operation for the temporary gravel crushing operation are proposed to be Monday to Saturday between 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The crushing is proposed to take place between July 2024 and October 2024. The closest residence is approximately 700 meters, about 2,300 feet southeast of the proposed site. Access to the gravel pit will continue to be from Township Road 94. Conditions of approval for 23/122 were imposed to require mitigating measures related to noise and dust nuisances that may be generated from the pit operations. Review of relevant legislation. The application is a development. It's under the Municipal Government Act. Under the Municipal Development Plan, the proposal is aligned with that policy document. Basically, this is part of the diversification of the county's economy, agriculture, oil and gas, and resource extraction. Land use bylaw. Under the Agriculture District 2 of the Land Use Bylaw, states sand, gravel, and surface mineral extraction are considered a Class 1, Class 2 discretionary use requiring approval of the Municipal Planning Commission. In the A2 District, the minimum side and rear setbacks of the A2 District is 20 meters, about 65 feet as per Section 5.52. The proposed crusher exceeds this minimum setback. The setback from the west property line is about 73 meters, and 90 meters from the north property line, and well over 200 meters from the south property line. There's a sketch of this showing the setbacks on page 15 of your package. The proposed crusher, there's no multi-parcel or hamlet residential subdivisions located within 300 meters of the subject site, and as such, the requirements of Section 12.10.2 are met. And that section of the land use bylaw limits operations if there's a hamlet residential or multi-parcel residential subdivision nearby. And the Cypress County Design Guidelines, the proposal would need to meet that. A road use agreement was a condition of approval for DP 23/122. The previous application was circulated to Public Works and to Alberta Transportation. They had no objections. Note again that road use agreement is condition number 11 on the previously approved DP 23/122. And Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors issued an exemption of the permit requirements for this development. Our recommended motion is approval. Conditions 1 through 4 are standard conditions. Condition number 5, the crushing materials shall be permitted between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., 7 days per week, for a period not exceeding 90 consecutive days, and that would be between July 31st, 2024 and October 31st, 2024. And the permit is issued on a time-based, number 6, the permit is issued on a time-based limited basis and will expire on November 1st, 2024. The development officer has discretion to extend the development permit for a period of up to 2 weeks in the event of delays of unavoidable circumstances without additional approval from the MPC. An alternate motion would be to refuse the application because it doesn't meet the definition of the A2 district, which is to strengthen agriculture. And we do have some pictures. These pictures were taken last year as part of the previous development permit. So this is looking east. We're looking north, east again, south, and southeast. So basically, it's a gravel pit. So, Mr. Chairman, this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. First of all, would you gentlemen please introduce yourself and then speak to your proposal?
Jim Bernhardt, General Manager of MJB.
Courtney Balk with MJB.
Thank you.
MJB is just interested in reopening up this gravel pit in anticipation of more construction going on in that area. There's going to be some highway expansion, I know, in that area, and also more windmill projects, and we'd just like to be able to produce gravel and sand to supply for the construction. That's all I really have to.
Okay.
If you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. I'll open the floor to discussion from Planning Commission. None? Motion? Questions?
Why are we not using a road use agreement on this? I understand it's just crushing, but that's going to be delivered off of there, right? Or does that screw us up in the future for not having it in place now?
Mr. Chairman, through the chair, the road use agreement was a condition of the previous development permit, and the previous conditions would have to be met, and that would include the road use agreement. Thank you.
Okay, so this won't supersede that?
Go ahead, Michelle. Okay. All right, Michelle moves approval of development application 24/132 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your development permit has been approved subject to meeting the conditions which have previously been discussed. The county will mail you a copy of your development permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there's now a 2-week appeal period, 3-week appeal period that the public may appeal the issuance of this permit. The development permit will be advertised in the Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks if no appeal is filed. Within 21 days of that, of the issue, the development permit will become valid at that time. If you have any further questions, you may contact the development officer to discuss them after today's meeting. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, next application for consideration is subdivision application 24CY05. Mr. and Mrs. Forsyth are there. You want to take the chairs up front? Good morning. Again, this is subdivision application 24CY05. Becky?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll say it one more time, subdivision 24CY05, and the owner applicant is Farron and Leanna Forsyth. This is located on Township Road 114, immediately east of Eagle Butte Road, on the southwest 25-11-5 west of the 4th. We're looking at a country residential subdivision, which would be zone CR2, and the proposal is to subdivide a 2.03 hectare parcel from a previously subdivided quarter section to create a separate title. The application is intended to subdivide a 2.03 hectare or 5 acre parcel from a previously subdivided quarter section. The purpose of the proposed subdivision is to create a separate title to develop a residence and yard. The remainder of the agricultural title contains dry land pasture and is 61.3 hectares or 151.43 acres in size. There are no oil or gas wells within a 100-meter radius of the proposed subdivision. The applicant is proposing the proposed subdivision to allow for the parcel to be sold to a family member to develop. The applicant intends to service the proposed subdivision with an on-site septic disposal field or tank and cistern for domestic use. The proposed subdivision will require a new access approach to be installed from Township Road 114. The applicant is proposing a 68.27 meter separation between the subdivided parcels to facilitate continued access via an existing approach and private access drive to the remnant agricultural title. There was a previous subdivision completed in this quarter section in 2020, which was 20CY07. However, it was an agricultural consolidation intended to correct the encroachment of an existing yard site. So you'll see that little triangular piece jotting out on the east side. In addition, a subdivision for a vacant parcel was approved in 2022, which was subdivision 22CY13. Therefore, the proposed subdivision will result in the third and final title to be taken out of the quarter section. There are residences and agricultural buildings currently under construction on both the previous subdivided parcel and the agricultural title. Cypress County Council recently approved a land use reclassification to Country Residential District 2 to allow the proposed subdivision to be in compliance with the Municipal Development Plan policies. The proposed subdivision is located outside of the Tri-Area Intermunicipal Development Plan boundary. The South Saskatchewan Regional Plan states that municipalities are to identify their agricultural land and to limit fragmentation and conversion to non-agricultural uses. Under the implementation section of the plan, section 5, efficient use of land, it states that the land use framework promotes approaches to reduce the amount of land that is taken up by permanent or long-term development by utilizing the minimum amount of land necessary. Section 666 of the Municipal Government Act states that a subdivision authority may require the owner of a parcel of land that is the subject of a proposed subdivision to provide reserve. Money in place of municipal reserve is recommended on the subdivided parcel. Part 2.9 road access of the subdivision regulations of the Municipal Government Act states that every proposed subdivision must provide direct access to a road or lawful means of access satisfactory to the subdivision authority to each lot that is created. Section 4.1.26, subdivision residential of the Municipal Development Plan states that the county may support additional subdivision of an existing farmstead parcel or a single vacant parcel if the following conditions are met. The parcels are redistricted to the appropriate country residential land use district. The country residential parcels conform to the applicable country residential regulations of the land use bylaw. The applicant, at the time of submitting the subdivision application, must comply with the Cypress County design guidelines and construction standards for both the existing farmstead or single vacant parcel and the proposed country residential parcel. The subdivision will not impact or hinder the agricultural use on the balance of the quarter section, and all parcels have direct access to the existing municipal road network or provincial highway. And the last one is utility easements may be required between the proposed parcel and the remainder of the agricultural title. So of course we circulated the application and we received comments back. Cypress County Finances replied that there are no local improvements associated with the property. Planning and Development replied that the proposed subdivision is intended to subdivide a vacant country residential parcel to be developed upon. Since this will be the third title proposed to be created in the quarter section, it is considered the final title under the current municipal development plan. The proposed subdivision is being created in such a way that the remnant quarter section will continue to utilize the existing farm access approach from Township Road 114 at the request of the applicant. The proposed subdivision has been plotted in such a manner to allow for larger machinery and equipment to access the remnant lands. The subdivision as proposed complies with section 4.1.26 of the Municipal Development Plan and is consistent with other similar approvals which have been granted in the past. No comments were received from Public Works, but I do believe I have some here that I got just before I left. I'll circle back to, oh no, I found it. The Cypress County Public Works replied that the proposed subdivision will need a new access approach off of Township Road 114. Apex Utilities replied that the proposed subdivision is outside of their franchise area and therefore they have no concerns. 40 Mile Gas Co-op replied that they have a main 1-inch distribution line within the southwest 2511-5 west of the 4th. A new gas service application will need to be applied for once the application is approved. Under rural utilities, secondary gas lines from a pre-existing meter are not permitted to run across lots, blocks, or quarter lines. Please have the applicant contact 40 Mile Gas for further clarification. Equus replied that this proposed subdivision is outside of their service area. Fortis Alberta replied that they are the distribution wire service provider for the area and that no easement is required. TELUS replied that they have no concerns with the proposed activities. And the Cypress County Assessor provided a market value assessment rate of $9,944.96 per hectare for money in place of municipal reserve purposes. So that takes me to my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, which is approval, subject to the following conditions. Number one, the developer is required to make a payment to the county for money in place of municipal reserve for 2.03 hectares at a rate of $994.49 per hectare, being 10% of the appraised market value of $9,944.96 per hectare. The payment is to be submitted to the county prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. Number two, the developer is required to obtain approval from Cypress County Public Works for the construction of a new access approach from Township Road 114 to the new parcel being created. The approach is to be constructed to Cypress County standards prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. And number three, the developer is required to supply copies of any utility right-of-way plans, easements, or agreements which are to be registered as a requirement for any affected utilities to Cypress County prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. And that is my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Becky. Mr. and Mrs. Forsyth, would you like to speak to your application at this time?
Just thanks, Becky. I think she covered it. So if you have any questions, we're here.
Okay. Open the floor. Mr. Wonka, I want.
Sorry.
Inside joke.
Oh, yeah, that was good. No, I don't see a problem with it. I'll approve it unless anybody else has something.
Any other discussion? Okay, open the floor to motions. Did you move it? Okay, all right. So Lloyd moves approval of subdivision application Threw me off. 24 CY05 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your subdivision has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will now mail you a copy of your subdivision approval. You're advised to begin working towards completing the necessary conditions and making arrangements to have the approved subdivided area surveyed if you have not already done so. You have 1 year from the date of subdivision approval to have met all of the approval conditions and to have the survey plan submitted to Alberta Land Titles by your surveyor for the registration of the separate title. If you have any further questions, you may contact the planner after today's meeting. Thank you. Okay, so our 10:30 appears, will they be attending? They will be attending. Okay. All right, so we will jump now to, let's do the new business, 6.2, the letter, everyone has... Wonka and the Wild Girls? The Wild Girls Project. Okay, so Kayleen, are you going to be discussing this? Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Capstone Infrastructure is requesting the consideration of the Municipal Planning Commission to hold a special meeting to review the development permit applications for the Wild Rose Wind Power Project. There are 37 applications anticipated for consideration in this project. The project received its awaited approval of the Alberta Utilities Commission the evening of Friday, July 5th. Unfortunately, the release of the approval did not align with the deadline for the applications to be placed on today's agenda for the Planning Commission's consideration. Should the Planning Commission wish to entertain the request, the following dates could be considered. We've got 3 dates that are identified as proposed dates. These dates would accommodate the needed 2-week notice for a public meeting as required under the Municipal Government Act. And as per bylaw 2020-17 Municipal Planning Commission, we require a minimum of 3 or more members to meet quorum. Additionally, a special meeting would likely accommodate another proposed solar project facility, which similarly received its AUC approval on Friday as well. The next regular scheduled MPC meeting will occur on August 13th, and a full agenda is anticipated. So consideration of the special meeting could help to downsize our August meeting and staff in terms of the workload that's needed for that agenda in August. So Mr. Chairman, 3 proposed dates, mornings or afternoons we can make work. Tuesday, July 30th, Wednesday, July 31st, or Thursday, August 1st. Again, Tuesday, July 30th, Wednesday, July 31st, or Thursday, August 1st.
Okay, so I guess we can consider this and look to those dates to see, to check availability with members of the Planning Commission. I'm good on all 3 dates. Anybody dates they cannot attend? First, well, I guess first, we'll look at the dates and then we'll, I guess, present the question of whether we do or do not do this meeting. So you're good on anything?
I know for sure I won't be here because we leave on the 29th. So.
You're gone for all of them? Okay, so that's 1. I believe I'm available. I don't have anything on my schedule. Amanda?
I don't have anything on my schedule, but I'm at work.
You're working, so you'd have to.
I'd have to get it off, yeah.
Dan?
I should be good.
Lloyd? I'll be good. Okay, so that right there presents 3 for sure. So I guess the next part of the question is, I guess we'll make, I'll accept a motion concerning one of those dates and let's take it from there.
Yeah, I'll make the motion for whichever date works for everybody, whatever we agree with here. I think for what's coming up, you remember how long those take. If there's going to be 30 of them there, it takes quite a while for us to get through them all. So if there's another one coming forward, it probably isn't a bad idea to have a special date for it. It's not that it's going to cost a bunch of money because we do charge for the applications on that day, so it's not going to come out of pocket for ratepayers.
Okay. Kayleen?
If I could make a suggestion, Mr. Chairman, if all 3 dates work for the Planning Commission members that plan to attend, perhaps Tuesday, July 30th would be the preferred. Just from an administrative perspective, it helps us with our advertising and making sure that we're meeting our deadlines. So Tuesday would probably be staff's preference.
Okay, I would agree with that. Keep it on a Tuesday.
Yeah, I'll make the motion then for the Tuesday, July 30th.
Same time as always?
10 a.m.?
10 a.m., yep.
Okay, so Dan moves that we convene a special meeting of the MPC on July 30th, 10 a.m.
Wild Rose, yeah.
10 a.m., July 30th. That's acceptable? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Well, you have your mic on. Let's do the planner's report.
Sounds good, Mr. Chairman. The planner's report's a little bit lengthier this go-around, being that we didn't have a meeting in July, so there's a couple of updates on here that are a little bit older, just so that we're not missing any time gaps. Probably notable coming out of this report is the decision of the Land and Property Rights Tribunal. Aaron had represented the county at the application there for oh goodness, the name is escaping me now, Bullen Construction for their gravel pit on Township Road 120. And the Land and Property Rights Tribunal has upheld the decision of the Planning Commission and all attached conditions. So I think also a really good temperature test that we've had now, a different appeal body review our decisions and they're up to par. So I think that's good takeaway information. Erin's been receiving quite a few drainage concerns in Dunmore and Desert Bloom with a lot of the recent rainfall, so she's been working with landowners to try to help mitigate some of those issues. Some cases are neighborly disputes where we have downspouts that are directed onto neighboring properties, so Erin has worked with those landowners to correct, so thank you to Erin for working on those. Other than that, I'm happy for any questions.
Who was the appellant for the Bullen appeal?
It was an adjacent landowner within the country residential subdivision. So that's why in our land use bylaw, we have the 300-meter distance of separation from adjoining country residential, and that is to mitigate some of those potential land use impacts. And the tribunal weighed in that those conditions are likely appropriate. So.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding the planner's report? Accept the motion. Michelle moves approval of the planner's report as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so somebody here for the development permit 24-137, Wild Homes. Yeah. Okay, can you please take one of the chairs up front? Can you please introduce yourself first? There's a button you press there and it'll turn blue.
Right here?
Sure.
Lara Burns with Wild Homes.
Thank you.
And I'm Brady Bull, I'm the homeowner.
Okay. So again, this is development application 24/137. Aaron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The site is located at 130 Dunes Way. The zoning is Recreation Residential Resort District, RRR. The proposal is to construct a pool and a pool house in the rear yard of the property. The applicant is requesting approval from the Municipal Planning Commission for the placement of a 20 by 40, 800 square foot in-ground pool with a proposed setback distance of 3.16, 10.3 feet from the rear property line. This results in a relaxation request of 3.34 meters, 10.9 feet, an 84 square meter, 904 square foot pool house with 4.9 meter, 16 foot variance to the rear yard setback is also proposed in the rear yard of this property. The previous DP that approved the dwelling on this site was 22/177 which approved a site coverage of 38.7%. If the in-ground pool, pool house, and sidewalk are approved, the total site coverage will be approximately 52%. The county has verification from the development engineer for Desert Bloom in the form of a stamped site coverage storm design plan that the existing drainage infrastructure has the capacity to handle additional flows up to 60% site coverage. In accordance with Section 16.61 of the Land Use Bylaw, the Development Authority can grant a variance based on the merit of the application, and the test is under Section 640 sub 6 of the MGA. So a variance cannot unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere or affect the use, enjoyment, or value of neighboring parcels of land. And the proposed development conforms with the use prescribed for the land or building in the Land Use Bylaw. Relevant legislation under Land Use Bylaw 22/09 in the RRR district, accessory buildings are considered a permitted use providing the proposal complies with the minimum setback requirements of the district. In the RRR district, Section 6.62, the rear setback of a 74.3 800 square foot accessory structure should have a rear setback of 6.5 meters, which is about 21.3 feet. The applicant is requesting a 3.3 meter, 10.9 foot rear setback variance for the in-ground pool. Section 12.110 of the Land Use Bylaw requires permanent pools to meet the setback regulations of the district in which they are placed. The pool house would need a similar approval for a similar variance. The area of the proposed pool house is 84 square meters, 904 square feet, and the required rear setback under Section 6.6.2 would also require a setback of 6.5 meters, 21 feet, and the applicant is requesting a variance of 4.9 meters, 16 feet. Moving the in-ground pool or the pool house forward to create a greater rear setback would not be possible due to the size of the backyard. The total site coverage for all accessory buildings is 84 square meters, 904 square feet, which is less than the Land Use Bylaw maximum of 139 square meters, 1,500 square feet for the RRR district. The 74.3 800 square foot pool was not included in the total building area calculation because it is an in-ground structure and will not have the same visual impact as an above-ground structure and will not contribute to increased storm runoff into the subdivision stormwater infrastructure. Our recommended motion is to approve this application, and conditions 1 through 6 are standard conditions. Condition number 7, any additional hard surfacing will require approval from Cypress County. And condition 8 would approve the setback relaxation for the in-ground pool. And condition 9 would approve the setback relaxation of the pool of 4.9 meters from the rear property line. The alternate motion for MPC would be to refuse the application because it does not comply with Section 6.62 of the Land Use Bylaw. And I do have some photos. Okay, this is looking towards the east. The house on the right-hand side is not finished being built yet. It's still under construction. Then we go to the next picture. We're looking northwest, which is basically out the backyard, and which generally shows the pool house and the pool location in the backyard. Then we're looking southeast. The existing house on the left-hand side does have variances approved. And I'm also showing the proposed location of the pool house and the pool in the backyard. And looking north, that's basically the general location of the pool and the pool house location. And do we have an air photo? Okay. So one thing to note is the house, that is currently occupied. The view, the vision, the house, basically people will be looking out this way, basically towards the north. And then the house to the south, the people, their view would be towards the southwest direction, whereas the pool house, the proposed pool house and the pool are located about here, so it wouldn't be within the sight lines of either property. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Ms. Burns or Mr. Bowl, would you like to speak to your application at this time?
I'd just like to say that, like, exactly what she said. So we were very mindful with the design of the pool house, so that basically on that one side property line there to the east, I guess. Yeah, it's basically providing them with protection or view. Am I not doing this properly? Oh, there we go. Yeah, so that would be it. Just that it was designed properly for the infrastructure around it. I would say. You have anything to add?
No, but I think she did an excellent job.
Yeah. Good job, Aaron.
Okay.
It is important to us that our neighbors aren't like dissatisfied with the aesthetics of it. So I don't think it would be an eyesore, and it's not going to be anything that's obtrusive or anything like that.
I will add quickly that I did speak to the neighbors on the side there and kind of ran everything by them as well, and they didn't have any objections whatsoever, so that would be it.
Okay, I have a quick question. The behind, I guess to the west of the property, that's part of the golf course?
It is not. The golf course is north. Well, maybe, no, I don't really think so. It's hard to zoom out. Yeah, if you see that view,
Okay. Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
the golf course would be north.
So there's a potential of that area to be developed down the road?
No, it's undevelopable.
Topography is too steep?
Right. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, it's currently designated as municipal reserve.
Okay. Thank you. I'll open the floor to questions. Other questions?
I'll move to approve it with the conditions.
Okay, Lloyd moves approval of development application 24/137 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your development permit has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will mail you a copy of your development permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there's now a 3-week appeal period that the public may appeal the issuance of this permit. The development permit will be advertised in the Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks. If no appeal is filed within 21 days from the date of issue, the development permit will become valid at that time. If you have any further questions, you may contact the development officer after today's meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Mr. Pancoast. Okay, so this is subdivision application 24CY. Would take a chair, please. 24CY03. Becky?
You bet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Agricultural subdivision 24CY03. Owner of the property is JBP Enterprises Incorporated or Jason Pancoast, and the applicant was Adam Thompson of Benchmark Geomatics. This is located on Range Road 43, approximately 4.5 kilometers east of Dunmore, on the northeast 412-4 west of the 4th. The land use district is Country Residential District 2, and the proposal is to subdivide a 5.66 hectare parcel from a previously subdivided quarter section to create 2 separate titles. This application is intended to subdivide a 5.66 hectare or 13.9 acre parcel from a previously subdivided quarter section for the purposes of creating 2 separate titles for the development of future home sites. The remainder of the agricultural title contains dry land pasture and is 63.2 hectares or 156.2 acres in size. There are no oil or gas wells within proximity of the proposed subdivision. The applicant is proposing the subdivision to allow for the sale of the individual lots for residential purposes. The future owners would have no option but to service the proposed lots with on-site septic disposal, fields or tanks, and cisterns or water wells for domestic use. The proposed subdivision will require that new access approaches be installed from Range Road 43 to each lot that is being created. Administration would be supportive of a requirement for a municipal services agreement to be registered against each of the Alberta land titles for the future construction of access approaches to each parcel. The remainder of the agricultural title has an existing access approach. It appears that there is an existing parcel on the far northeast corner of the quarter section containing 0.38 acres that is titled to the Crown. So I'm not sure if I have a pointer here, but does everybody... You circle the mouse around it. So in the far northeast corner, you can see that the quarter section is cut off just on the other side of the road right-of-way. Administration has worked with the applicant surveyor to confirm that in 1952, this 0.38 acre portion retained an Alberta land title for reasons unknown. In reviewing the Alberta land title, the northeast quarter has two exemptions, one for the roadway and one for it's titled cutoff. Both exemptions are detailed in the surveyed road plan for Range Road 43. Therefore, although the cutoff theoretically creates a parcel in the quarter section, the use is intended for road and access purposes and not for agricultural use. Therefore, the proposed subdivision will result in 4 titles to be taken out of the quarter section. However, the 0.38 acre parcel is intended to form part of the road plan. For this unique reason, administration does not believe that this situation will create precedents to create an additional parcel. A residence could still be developed on the remainder of the agricultural title, and the proposed subdivision is located outside of the Tri-Area Intermunicipal Development Plan boundary. Under relevant legislation, the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan states that municipalities are to identify their agricultural land and to limit fragmentation and conversion to non-agricultural uses. Under the implementation section of the plan, section 5, efficient use of land, it states that the land use framework promotes approaches to reduce the amount of land that is taken up by permanent or long-term development by utilizing the minimum amount of land necessary. Section 666 of the Municipal Government Act states that a subdivision authority may require the owner of a parcel of land that is subject of a proposed subdivision to provide reserve. Money in place of municipal reserve is recommended on the subdivided parcels. Part 2.9 road access states that every proposed subdivision must provide direct access to a road or lawful means of access satisfactory to the subdivision authority to each lot that is created. Section 4.1.26 land use policies of the municipal development plan states that the county may support additional subdivision of an existing farmstead or single vacant parcel if the following conditions are met. The parcels, including the farmstead, are redistricted to the appropriate country residential land use district. The country residential parcels conform to the applicable country residential regulations in the land use bylaw. The applicant, at the time of submitting the subdivision application, must comply with the Cypress County design guidelines and construction standards for both the existing farmstead or single vacant parcel and the proposed country residential parcel. The subdivision will not impact or hinder the agricultural use on the balance of the quarter section, and all parcels have direct access to the existing municipal road network or provincial highway. And lastly, utility easements may be required between the proposed parcel and the remainder of the agricultural title. When we circulated the application, Cypress County Finances replied that there are no local improvements associated with the property. Planning and Development replied that the proposed subdivision is intended to create 2 country residential titles in the quarter section. Therefore, are the final titles eligible to be subdivided. The recommended registration of the Municipal Services Agreement on title allows for the installation of road approaches to be delayed until such time a development permit application is applied for and the site layout is known. The agreement will be registered on the Alberta land title by caveat and will ensure future successors of the land are made aware of the requirements and expectations. Additionally, as is detailed in the report, the 0.38 acre parcel is considered road plan by Alberta land titles and would not be eligible for development. The subdivision as proposed complies with section 4.1.26 of the Municipal Development Plan and is consistent with other similar approvals which have been granted in the past. Cypress County Public Works replied that 2 new access approaches are needed to the proposed parcels. The rest of the farmland has an existing approach. TELUS Communications replied that they have no concerns with the proposed activities. Equus replied that they have no concerns as this land is outside of the service area. Apex Utilities replied that they have no objection to the proposed subdivision. Fortis Alberta replied that they have reviewed the plan and determined that no easement is required. 40 Mile Gas replied that they have no conflict with the subdivision proposal. Please note that the 6-inch high-pressure steel infrastructure within Northeast 412-4 west of the 4th is ownership of 40 Mile Gas Co-ops Limited. However, this quarter falls within the AltaGas franchise. In the event there is any construction or crossing, surface or pipeline within 30 meters of our infrastructure, it is imperative that our office be contacted as this is critical infrastructure with shallow depth to cover. The City of Medicine Hat Environment, Land and Gas Production replied that they have reviewed the application and offers the following comments. Surface improvements are not permitted within the City of Medicine Hat pipeline utility right-of-way and within 100 meters of any City of Medicine Hat wellhead unless the subdivision or landowner applies to and receives approval from the Alberta Energy Regulator and the city for a setback reduction. Any ground disturbances or surface improvements within 30 meters of any City of Medicine Hat gas pipeline or within 100 meters of any gas wells will require a crossing or proximity agreement. And Alberta Transportation replied that the requirements of Section 18 are not met. The department anticipates minimal impact on the highway from this proposal. Pursuant to Section 20 of the regulation, Transportation and Economic Corridors grants approval for the subdivision authority to vary the requirements of Section 18 of the regulation. The requirements of Section 19 are not met. There is no direct access to the highway and there is sufficient local road access to the subdivision and adjacent lands. Pursuant to Section 20 of the regulation, Transportation and Economic Corridors grants approval for the subdivision authority to vary the requirements of Section 19 of the regulation. The department expects that the municipality will mitigate the impacts of traffic generated by developments approved on the local road connections to the highway system, pursuant to Policy 7 of the Provincial Land Use Policies and Section 618.4 of the Municipal Government Act. And finally, the Cypress County Assessor provided a market value assessment rate of $7,818.11 per hectare for money in place of municipal reserve purposes. So my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is approval, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, the developer is required to make a payment to the county for money in place of municipal reserve for 5.66 hectares at a rate of $781.81 per hectare, being 10% of the appraised market value of $7,818.11 per hectare. The payment is to be submitted to the county prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. Number 2, the developer is required to enter into a municipal services agreement with the county for the construction of an access approach from Range Road 43 to each of the subdivided parcels. The municipal services agreement is to be executed and registered in conjunction with the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. And number 3, our standard condition, the developer is required to supply copies of any utility right-of-way plans, easements, or agreements which are to be registered as a requirement for any affected utilities to Cypress County prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. That is my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Becky. Well done. Mr. Pankos, first of all, can we have a cover policy? Can you please remove your hat? Thanks. Yeah, no problem. So would you like to speak to your application at this time?
I think Becky covered everything.
Okay. All right. I'll open the floor to questions, discussion. I have one question regarding this. So now we have setback restrictions for hamlets and country residential enclaves. Would this be considered part of the country residential enclave on top of the hill, and would that affect setbacks for development of neighboring properties?
Are you asking if it would be part of the multi-parcel because of its distance?
Yeah, would it be considered, when we considered setbacks for wind development, other things like that, there's a setback from hamlets within that restriction and country residential enclaves. And I'm just wondering if this would be considered an enclave, or is it part of that, or is it not?
Maybe Kayleen can jump into, but I'm not aware of any setbacks we have for new residential development. I know that our municipal development plan wants us to locate residential subdivisions where we already have them. So having a multi-parcel close by is a appropriate location for further development of residential, but I'm not aware of any specific setbacks.
Kayleen?
And is the question, Mr. Chairman, relating more so to renewable energy and setbacks from hamlets and adjacent country residential for projects?
And I believe CFOs are included in that as well.
Okay, yeah, so that was something that we entertained as part of our municipal development plan and land use bylaw review in 2020. However, we ended up amending that regulation to only be setbacks from hamlets, so we don't contemplate that from adjoining country residential. However, any future project would be required to abide by provincial jurisdiction. So AUC, that would be your noise control regulations, and then in the case of a CFO, that would be your minimum distance of separation. So that would fall to the provincial regulator in that case.
Okay. Questions, discussion? Okay. So Dan moves approval of subdivision application 24CY03 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your subdivision has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will now mail you a copy of your subdivision approval. You're advised to begin working towards completing the necessary conditions and make arrangements to have the approved subdivided area surveyed if you have not already done so. You have 1 year from the subdivision's approval date to have met all of the approval conditions and have the survey plan submitted to Alberta Land Titles by your surveyor for registration of the separate titles. If you have any further questions, you may contact the planner after today's meeting. Thank you. Yeah. So next subdivision application, subdivision application 24CY06. Becky, go ahead with that one.
Sorry, I just had a note that I needed to double check I wasn't missing something. Just back from vacation, bear with me. Okay, so agricultural subdivision 24CY06. Again, the owner is JBP Enterprises, Inc., or Jason Pancoast. Applicant, Adam Thompson of Benchmark Geomatics. This is also located on Range Road 43, approximately 4.5 kilometers east of Dunmore on the southeast, 412, west of the 4th. This is a country residential District 2 land use, and the proposal is to subdivide a 2.84 hectare parcel from a previously subdivided quarter section to create a separate title. So this application is intended to subdivide a 2.84 hectare or 7 acre parcel from a previously subdivided quarter section for the purposes of creating a separate title for the development of a future home site. The remainder of the agricultural title contains dryland pasture and is 63.2 hectares or 140.7 acres in size. There are no oil or gas wells within proximity of the proposed subdivision. The applicant is proposing the subdivision to allow for the development of a residence and yard. The applicant intends to service the proposed lot with on-site septic disposal, field or tank, and cistern for domestic use. The proposed subdivision will require that a new access approach be installed from Range Road 43. The remainder of the agricultural title does not appear to have an existing access approach. Therefore, the Municipal Planning Commission, as a condition of subdivision approval, may need to consider a subdivision approval condition for the installation of a road approach to the remnant parcel. There is an existing multi-parcel subdivision located within the southeast 412 west of the 4th, directly south of the proposed subdivision. The proposed subdivision will result in the third and final title eligible to be taken out of the quarter section. A residence could still be developed on the remainder of the agricultural title, and the proposed subdivision is located outside of the Tri-Area Intermunicipal Development Plan boundary. The South Saskatchewan Regional Plan states that municipalities are to identify their agricultural land and to limit fragmentation and conversion to non-agricultural uses. Under the implementation section of the plan, Section 5, efficient use of land, it states that the land use framework promotes approaches to reduce the amount of land that is taken up by permanent or long-term development by utilizing the minimum amount of land necessary. Section 666 of the Municipal Government Act states that a subdivision authority may require the owner of a parcel of land that is subject of a proposed subdivision to provide reserve, and money in place of municipal reserve is recommended on this parcel. Part 29 Road Access states that every proposed subdivision must provide direct access to a road or lawful means of access satisfactory to the subdivision authority to each lot that is created. Section 4.1.26 of the Municipal Development Plan states that the county may support additional subdivision of an existing farmstead or single vacant parcel if the following conditions are met. The parcels are redistricted to the appropriate country residential land use district. The country residential parcels conform to the applicable regulations in the land use bylaw. The applicant, at the time of submitting the application, must comply with the Cypress County design guidelines and construction standards for both the existing farmstead or single vacant parcel and the proposed country residential parcel. The subdivision will not impact or hinder the agricultural use on the balance of the quarter section, and all parcels have direct access to the existing municipal road network or provincial highway. And utility easements may be required between the proposed parcel and the remainder of the agricultural title. So when circulating the application, Cypress County Finances reply that there are no local improvements associated with the property. The proposed subdivision is intended to create, this is from Planning and Development. The proposed subdivision is intended to create one single parcel out of the quarter section. The existing multi-parcel subdivision located to the south constitutes one title from the parcel in accordance with the Municipal Development Plan. Therefore, this subdivision will result in the third and final title eligible to be created. The subdivision as proposed complies with Section 4.1.26 of the Municipal Development Plan and is consistent with other similar approvals which have been granted in the past. Cypress County Public Works replied that there is a hill at this location on Range Road 43, so it may be required that an engineer is to determine sightlines and the appropriate location of an approach for the proposed parcel. In addition, Cypress County Utilities replied that the Irvin Regional Water line is on the south end of Southeast 412-4 west of the 4th. However, this should not affect that due to the proposed subdivision being in the north corner of the quarter section. TELUS Communications replied that they have no concerns with the proposed activities. Equus replied that they have no concerns as this land is out of the service area. Apex Utilities replied that they have no objection to the proposed subdivision as it's outside of their service area. Fortis replied that they have reviewed the plan and determined no easement is required. 40 Mile Gas replied they have no conflict with the subdivision proposal. Alberta Transportation replied that the requirements of Section 18 are not met. The department anticipates minimal impact on the highway from this proposal. Pursuant to Section 20 of the regulation, Transportation and Economic Corridors grants approval for the subdivision authority to vary the requirements of Section 18 of the regulation. The requirements of Section 19 are not met. There is no direct access to the highway, and there is sufficient local road access to the subdivision and adjacent lands. Pursuant to Section 20 of the regulation, Transportation and Economic Corridors grants approval for the subdivision authority to vary the requirements of Section 19 of the regulation. The department expects that the municipality will mitigate the impacts of traffic generated by developments approved in the local road connections to the highway system pursuant to Policy 7 of the Provincial Land Use Policies and Section 618.4 of the Municipal Government Act. The Cypress County Assessor provided a market value assessment rate of $8,447.86 per hectare for money in place of municipal reserve purposes. That takes me to our recommendation, which is approval, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, the developer is required to make a payment to the county for money in place of municipal reserve for 2.84 hectares at a rate of $844.78 per hectare, being 10% of the appraised market value of $8,447.86 per hectare. The payment is to be submitted to the county prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. Number 2, the developer is required to obtain approval from Cypress County Public Works for the construction of 2 new access approaches from Range Road 43, both to the new parcel being created and the remnant agricultural title. The approaches are to be constructed to Cypress County standards prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. And again, number 3 are standard conditions. The developer is required to supply copies of any utility right-of-way plans, easements, or agreements which are to be registered as a requirement for any affected utilities to Cypress County prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. And that's my report.
Thank you, Becky. Mr. Pankos, any comments here?
I got a few comments about condition 2.
Okay.
The requirements of the approaches. I don't feel the second approach is necessary. There isn't one there now. I own the 3/4 around it for access, as well as Township Road 120. There's no ditch. I have access there. I don't want one. I don't need one. If I was forced to put one in, I wouldn't even put a gate in because I don't want hunters and trespassers on there. There's also thousands of quarters just like this for agriculture use, right? So, and then if you look, the little gap on 43 there would be the only spot it could go, which actually makes the line of sight worse. If they're worried about the line of sight on the subdivision, the line of sight on the agriculture approach would be worse. So I don't really think it has anything to do with the scope of this subdivision. And as far as the first approach, whoever is putting the house in my opinion, would want to choose the spot. The lot's 185 meters long. I mean, who am I to decide where that is? I did have Benchmark Geomatics do a sight line, and the sight line is 185 meters from the, oh no, sorry, that's the wrong one. The sight line's 331 meters from the closest point and 516 meters from the farthest point. Cypress County Rule 1118 states you have to have a 100-meter sight line, so I well exceed that. I talked to Public Works. They said they just put that in because they hadn't gone there yet to look at it. Stopping distance at 80 kilometer an hour is 70 meters, so I don't see any safety issues with just changing it to municipal service agreement like the last one we did.
Okay. Becky, do you want to speak to the access road?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if the Municipal Planning Commission would like to waive the agricultural access or the requirement for that, that would be compliant with what we have in the county. If Mr. Pankos came in to build a residence, of course, at that time he would have to put in an approach. But for agricultural access, we wouldn't require that. So that would be up to the board if they want to waive that. And for the second one, of course, going by the comments from Public Works is why we changed that from a municipal services agreement to the requirement to construct it. If the board feels that they would rather want to change that to the municipal services agreement, we can do that as well.
Mr. Pankos stated that the site had not been visibly viewed by the county. Is that the case, or do they?
I talked to them Friday, and they said they hadn't looked yet, but they were hoping to get there Friday, but I haven't heard back. And that's why they put that in there, just to cover themselves.
So would it be appropriate to postpone this till they look at it, or do we want to make? I guess I'll leave it to the Planning Commission if we want to make a decision on it today. But
I as well have a sight line here from the surveyors if anyone wants to see it. So,
if the Planning Commission is leaning on a municipal services agreement, it would get registered on title. So when Mr. Pankos sold the property, the new owner is going to have to apply for a road approach permit at that time. The road approach permit is going to outline what requirements there are if it needs to be engineered or put in a certain location, those approvals would have to be in place before it's constructed. So the municipal services agreements still covers us off that way.
Okay. All right, I'll open the floor to discussion for planning commission. Questions, motions? With conditions as presented? Okay. All right, so Nigel moves approval of subdivision application 24CY with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your subdivision has been approved subject to meeting conditions which were previously discussed. The county will now mail you a copy of your subdivision approval. You are advised to begin working towards completion of the necessary conditions and making arrangements to have the subdivision approval area surveyed if you have not already done so. You have 1 year from the date of subdivision's approval to have met all of the approval conditions and to have the survey plan submitted to Alberta Land Titles for registration of the separate title. If you have any further questions, you can contact the planner after today's meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we just have a question for clarification. So the motion is to move the condition as presented. So are we also including the requirement for the approach to the agricultural land as well? Or was that without that amendment that Becky had mentioned?
And that's why I said as presented.
Okay.
So everybody was clear on that.
Okay. I just want to make sure that the applicant is clear on that as well, so.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Jason. Okay, that concludes all of the points on the agenda for today's meeting. Adjourn the meeting.